What if being a hero meant you had to die for it? That's the impossible choice the entire galaxy watched as Thomas Chen, a simple engineer, faced a death sentence for saving 47 lives. The trial was held on Concordia Prime, a glowing station that had stood for 10,000 years. But the decision made here today was about to spark a war that could last 10,000 more. If you think you know how this ends, you're going to want to stick around, because the truth is, something no one saw coming. Thomas stood there, his wrists shackled in humming blue light. His face was still bruised from his arrest 3 weeks earlier, and his engineer's jumpsuit was covered in grime. At just 43 years old, with streaks of gray in his hair, he looked like a man carrying the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. The chamber around him was colossal, filled with beings from 1,000 worlds, all gathered to see a good man be destroyed. But only 5 of them had any real power. Seated on towering thrones of judgment were the Council of Ancients, the 5 species who had ruled the cosmos since long before humanity had even learned to chart the stars. They were timeless, they were absolute, and in their own minds, they were infallible. The first one to speak was the Zelnari. To humans, she was known as Elder Silver, since her true name was an intricate melody of clicks that no human could ever pronounce. She was impossibly tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like a film of oil, and her eyes were 2 pits of endless black. When she spoke, the sound didn't come to your ears, it resonated deep within your bones. Thomas Chen, from the planet known as Earth, she projected. You stand accused of the highest crime in galactic law, the desecration of a holy site. The Temple of First Light on Kepler 442b was a sacred place for 7,000 years, built by my own ancestors. You reduced it to rubble in under an hour. Thomas didn't even blink. He met her gaze without fear. I destroyed that temple to save my crew, he stated, his voice perfectly level. A solar flare was about to incinerate my ship and all 47 souls aboard. Your temple was built directly over the only cave system deep enough to shield us. I pleaded for access. I waited until the final possible moment. But your reply was still 3 days out, and my crew was already suffering from radiation exposure. So yes, he confirmed with absolute conviction. I used mining explosives to breach the temple floor and get my people into those caves. I saved their lives. A roar of outrage swept through the chamber as 1,000 voices erupted in fury. Elder Silver raised a single slender finger, and the entire room went silent. You requested permission, she said, her voice colder than the void between galaxies. And when our reply did not arrive on your schedule, you simply did as you pleased. This is the fundamental flaw of your kind. You are impulsive, impatient. You consider nothing beyond your own short existence. The human ambassador, Maria Santos, leaped to her feet. For 3 weeks straight, she had been fighting for Thomas, surviving on nothing but caffeine and sheer determination. She was a small woman with the intensity of a supernova in her eyes. Elder Silver, I beg you, Maria pleaded, her voice strained with fatigue. We recognize the temple's significance. We will pay any cost to see it restored. We will accept any penance. But Thomas Chen made the choice to save 47 living people. He faced an impossible decision. But does that decision not carry weight? Another council member, a massive creature of living stone that humans called Elder Stone, rumbled as it shifted its incredible bulk. A trickle of dust fell from its mouth as it spoke. It carries no weight at all, the creature ground out. The laws were created for a purpose. If we begin to bend them for every tragic tale, we will have no laws left. What we will have is chaos, and we must remember, it was chaos that claimed billions of lives before this very council established peace. A third member, a shimmering, ethereal being named Elder Whisper, added its voice, which sounded like the faint rustling of autumn leaves. Your species has only existed among the stars for 50 of your own years, she hissed. In that briefest of moments, you have ignited 12 conflicts, violated 43 trade pacts, and dismissed innumerable cultural protocols. You constantly plead for another chance, for one more exception. We have granted you far too many already. Maria's spirit crumbled. She saw it in their cold, alien expressions. They weren't just passing judgment on one man, They were passing judgment on all of humanity. She glanced at Thomas, who offered her a faint, sorrowful smile. He knew it was over, too. The fourth council member, a bubbling aquatic life form called Elder Deep, spoke through a translation device. "Our deliberation is concluded. We have weighed all the evidence," Elder Deep gurgled. "But it is the message of our verdict that is paramount. To show mercy now would signal to the galaxy that our most sacred laws are not binding for humans. Therefore, the law must remain absolute." And there it was, the final nail in his coffin. The fifth member of the council, a creature of pure, contained energy called Elder Flame, had been quiet until now. He finally crackled to life. "Thomas Chen," his voice sounded like a wildfire, "do you have any final statement? Do you grasp the true gravity of your actions?" Thomas inhaled deeply. When he finally spoke, his voice was clear and strong. "I grasp that I destroyed a structure you considered sacred, and I grasp that I violated your law, but I also grasp that I put 47 living people ahead of a pile of old rocks. So yes, I grasp it perfectly, and given the same choice, I would do it again without a moment's hesitation." The chamber exploded. It was both a confession and an open act of defiance. Aliens from 100 systems were on their feet, screaming at his insolence. He wasn't even repentant. Elder Silver's hand shot up, and silence fell once more. "Then your fate is decided," she announced. "The Council of Ancients finds Thomas Chen guilty. The sentence is death. It will be carried out now and broadcast to every known planet. Let this be humanity's lesson." "No!" Maria cried out, lunging forward, but two massive guards caught her. The council members were already turning their backs, their judgment passed, their duty fulfilled. But Thomas Chen had more to say. His voice, now somehow amplified, boomed through the quiet hall. "My name is Thomas Chen," he declared. "I am a husband. I am a father to 2 incredible daughters on Earth. I am an engineer. And I'm about to be executed because I chose to save my friends instead of letting them be burned alive to protect an empty shrine." He paused, his words hanging in the tense silence. It felt like the entire chamber was holding its breath. "When humanity first traveled to the stars, we came looking for wisdom. We dreamed we'd find enlightened races who cherished life and compassion above all else." He stared at the council's now vacant thrones with utter disgust. "We were wrong," he said, his voice lowering to a dangerous growl. "You care more about your rulebook than you do about people. You value your own arrogance more than you value justice. And now you're going to murder me to teach a lesson." The guards were closing in, their energy weapons humming. "But you have misunderstood something critical," Thomas said, his voice becoming as hard as diamond. "You think this is a lesson for us? That this is going to finally put humanity in its proper place?" A strange, cold smile touched his lips. "You have just made the single greatest mistake of the last 10,000 years, he said. "We came in peace. We followed your laws. We tried our best to be your allies." The guards grabbed his arms, dragging him to a glowing platform at the center of the room. "But you just taught us something incredibly valuable," he yelled back at the thrones. "That in this galaxy, you see kindness as a weakness, that the only thing you actually respect is raw power. So congratulations, you're about to find out what happens when you push a peaceful race to the breaking point." They threw him down onto the platform. "My death isn't the end of this story. It's page 1 of a new chapter that you are going to absolutely hate. You think 10,000 years of power makes you untouchable? You're relics, and you just poked a sleeping giant." Elder Silver's voice sliced through his final declaration like a shard of glass. "End it." A silent, blinding beam of light erupted from the platform. One moment, Thomas Chen was standing there. The next, he was nothing but a shimmering cloud of dust, just gone. Maria Santos collapsed to her knees, a terrible broken sob tearing out from the depths of her soul. The broadcast signal, carrying the image of a man reduced to atoms, shot out across the stars. The council had proven their point. On billions of screens, across 1,000 different worlds, everyone witnessed the council's justice. The message was unmistakable: defy our authority, and you will be erased. And on Earth, in a quiet house in the suburbs, Lisa Chen watched her husband cease to exist. Her 2 daughters, 15-year-old Jennifer and 12-year-old Sarah, were clinging to her, their small frames trembling with grief. Only a few months ago, he had promised them he would come home. Now, that promise was turned to dust. But Lisa didn't shed a tear. A chilling, terrifying sense of calm settled over her. The grief was so profound, so complete, that it had scorched all her tears away. The galaxy hadn't just taken her husband, it had executed him on live television for the crime of being a hero. In that moment, something inside Lisa Chen snapped, and with that snap, a fire was ignited in the hearts of billions of humans. But here's the twist nobody could have predicted. Thomas Chen knew this was his fate, and he was prepared. Back on Concordia Prime, as his wife Maria wept uncontrollably, her personal data pad chimed. It was a brand new message from Thomas Chen, sent just 1 minute ago. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, there was a single line of code and a short note. Maria, make them listen to the echo. The real truth is in the echo. I love you all. They made a hero pay the ultimate price for choosing compassion, and they blasted it across the galaxy as a show of power. But it wasn't a warning. It was a colossal mistake. If you think you know how a revenge story plays out, you better stick around, because you're about to witness how humanity truly gets even. In a secret bunker deep beneath the lunar surface, General Marcus Wells watched the static where a man used to be. "Is it done?" he asked, his voice deceptively calm. A young technician, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe, could only nod. "Yes, sir. The echo is now live." His last words weren't a final statement. They were an activation key. Thomas Chen, the man, is gone. But his consciousness? It is now a phantom haunting their entire network. The general stood, his shadow stretching over the command center. "Then it's time to get to work," he said. "They believed they were silencing one man. They have no idea they just gave us the very weapon that will tear their empire apart from the inside." He had witnessed the horrors of 3 different wars and believed nothing could faze him again. He was mistaken. General Wells replayed the recording of the execution for the 4th time, then grabbed a secure comms device. "This is Wells," he stated, his voice as cold as deep space. "Protocol Omega is a go. Authorization, Red Sky Dawn. I want every available person on this. I want everything we have and everything we can possibly invent. I don't give a damn about the budget, and I don't give a damn about the timeline. The Council just made the single greatest blunder in galactic history. Our job is to make them understand in agonizing detail the true cost of that mistake." He slammed the comm unit down. His gaze was locked on the screen where Thomas Chen had been disintegrated. "They wanted to teach us a lesson." In a quiet room, General Wells spoke to no one at all. "All right, class is in session," he murmured. "And humanity learns very, very quickly." At that moment, across every human colony and station, a vast and silent engine of retribution whirred to life. It began as a ghost in the network, a flicker in the code, but it was growing stronger by the second. The Council had killed one man to teach humanity a lesson. They were about to find out that humanity had a lesson of its own to teach. And humanity's lessons were always delivered with absolute crushing force. As far as the Galactic Council was concerned, the case was closed and justice had been done. They had absolutely no idea that real justice was just getting started. It had been 3 months, 90 days since they executed Thomas Chen, a broadcast spectacle designed to put the upstarts in their place. 3 months since every single human alive watched one of their own be put to death for the crime of breaking a trivial rule to save a ship packed with refugees. And over those 3 months, something had started to deeply worry the galactic leadership. Earth had gone completely silent. From her spire on the capital world, Concordia Prime, Elder Silver examined intelligence reports that were utterly nonsensical. Her people, the Zelneri, didn't truly feel fear. But the tightening knot in her core felt remarkably close. "Something is terribly wrong," she murmured. "They've withdrawn all their ambassadors," her young aide reported, his voice filled with tension. Every single human diplomat from every council world has returned to Earth, no reason given. They simply packed their bags and vanished. Elder Silver's patterned skin shifted to a worried shade of violet. "And their trade agreements?" she inquired. "Terminated. One of them," the aide confirmed. "Every human cargo ship is back in their home system. They allowed all their existing contracts to run out and are refusing to even consider new ones. They won't even accept our hails. It's like they've just disconnected themselves from the rest of the galaxy." Elder Silver drifted toward the enormous window that overlooked the bustling star lanes. For thousands of years, this had been a cooperative network of 1,000 different species. But now, in one tiny, previously ignored corner of space, humanity was up to something. "What about their internal communications?" Elder Silver asked. Her aide hesitated for a moment. "That's the most bizarre part," he said. "The human colonies are all communicating with each other, constantly. We can see the network activity, but they've slammed the door shut on every non-human frequency. Every message we attempt to send is simply ignored. It's as if, to them, the rest of us just stopped existing." Elder Silver remained quiet for a long time. "They are in mourning," she said, trying to make it sound convincing. "They are angry. They simply need some time to cool down. We must grant them their space." But even as the words left her mouth, she knew she was lying to herself. 1,000 light years away, Elder Stone was having the exact same conversation, but with far less patience. He sat on a throne carved from a single crystal, his advisors gathered before him. The human situation was the first item on the agenda. "Our intelligence shows a massive surge in their industrial activity," one advisor reported. "Energy consumption from their home star, Sol, has increased by 300%. They are manufacturing at a pace that should be physically impossible for a species at their technological stage." "Building what?" Elder Stone's voice was a deep rumble. "We have no idea," the advisor admitted. "Their borders are locked down completely. Any vessel that approaches gets a single warning. If it doesn't turn back immediately, it's obliterated. We lost 3 of our most advanced stealth drones that way in the last week alone." Elder Stone balled his enormous rock-like hands into fists. "They are in no position to make threats," he roared. "We have guided this galaxy for 10,000 years. They have barely been traveling the stars for 50. They are nothing more than children having a temper tantrum." But another advisor dared to speak up, his tone careful. "Elder Stone, with all due respect, perhaps the punishment was too severe. The human did, after all, save his crew. Maybe a formal apology." "Never!" Elder Stone's shout vibrated through the chamber. "We do not apologize for upholding the law. The humans will learn their place, or we will show them the definition of true terror. Send an official demand for an explanation. If we receive no reply within 1 week, we will interpret their silence as an act of open rebellion." The message was launched into the void. It was met with nothing but silence. In her meditation chamber, Elder Whisper's consciousness touched the cosmic currents of the universe. She could sense things that others were blind to, and the current she felt now filled her with a powerful feeling of dread. Something was on the horizon. It felt like the sudden drop in pressure just before a catastrophic storm. The very fabric of space-time around the human sector felt wrong. It was stretched tight and humming with a hidden, impossible power. She immediately called for an emergency meeting of the council. The 5 leaders gathered in a secure virtual space, their minds connected across the vastness of the galaxy. This was a measure reserved for only the most severe threats. "A great danger is approaching," Elder Whisper said, wasting no time on formalities. "The humans are creating something that will destroy the galactic balance of power. We must intervene now before it's finished." "Intervene how?" Elder Deep's voice gurgled. "We have attempted to talk. They are ignoring us. We can't force them to respond." "Send the fleet," Elder Flame proposed, his plasma body crackling with impatience. "A simple display of force. Remind them of their place." "Absolutely not," Elder Silver cut in. "That would be a disastrous error. Moving our warships to their border is an act of war. For all their posturing, we do not want a war." "And why is that?" Elder Stone challenged. "If they pose a threat, you eliminate that threat. It is a simple calculation." Elder Whisper's form seemed to waver. "Because I have spent the last 3 months studying them," she said softly. "I have analyzed every record we possess on human history, and I have discovered something that chills me to my core. Humans do not react to threats the way we do. When we are threatened, we weigh the odds, we behave logically. But humans, when they are pushed into a corner, when they truly believe that all is lost, they don't bother with logic. They throw calculations out the nearest airlock. They simply fight. And they do not stop. Ever. Not until they have won, or until every last one of them has fallen." "Primitive," Elder Stone sneered. "Perhaps," Elder Whisper conceded, "but it is also terrifyingly effective. In their short time as a spacefaring race, they've had thousands of internal conflicts. They've nearly annihilated themselves more than once, but they always recover. And every single time they go to war, they emerge smarter, quicker, and far more deadly." "Their fleet is a joke next to ours," Elder Flame sputtered. "Our ships are millennia more advanced." "That was the case 3 months ago," Elder Whisper countered. "But what is the truth today? What have they been building in that absolute silence? What new, terrible things have they learned this time?" A heavy, anxious quiet fell over the council. Finally, Elder Deep spoke. "We could dispatch a single probe," he suggested. "Just one. To get a look. We won't even cross their border, just maintain a safe distance. Let's just get a glimpse of what they're so busy creating." It sounded like a reasonable, logical proposal. They all came to an agreement. They dispatched their very best, a Zelnari spy probe. It was a marvel of stealth engineering, virtually undetectable, and it cost more than a small planet. It survived for 17 seconds. The probe slid into the border region and powered up its deep-range scanning equipment. It was instantly overwhelmed with unbelievable data, massive energy signatures, shipyards operating at speeds that defied known physics, and the birth of an entirely new armada. But the numbers were all wrong. The scale was simply beyond comprehension. There were too many, far, far too many ships. The probe transmitted its final data packet back to the council, and then it just blinked out of existence. No explosion, no warning, nothing. One moment, the probe was there, a silent ghost in the void. The next, it was nothing but superheated plasma, erased by defenses so fast they destroyed it before it even registered as a threat. Elder Silver stared at the probe's final flickering image, and a shockwave of color washed over her skin, bleaching it a ghostly white, the Zelnari equivalent of a human heart stopping dead. "That can't be real," she breathed, her voice a fragile whisper. "It's simply not possible." But the numbers on the screen were cold, hard facts. In the 90 days since they had publicly executed Thomas Chen to make a point, humanity hadn't been cowering, they hadn't been grieving, they had been building. And thousands of miles beneath the Earth's crust, in a command center that had been a secret for 30 years, General Marcus Wells was ready. Have you ever been punished for doing something heroic? That's exactly what happened to Thomas Chen, a good man who was executed on a galactic broadcast for saving lives. The council thought they were teaching humanity a lesson, but all they did was awaken a sleeping giant. Stick around, because this story is the ultimate proof that you should never, ever push good people too far. Deep underground, in a facility shielded by miles of rock, humanity was about to give its answer. "Status report," General Wells's voice echoed, sharp and certain. A junior officer met his gaze, her face lit by the glow of a data slate. "All shipyards are running 24/7, sir. The first wave is complete. We have 12,000 brand new warships armed and ready to go. Wave 2 is 60% complete," she added, "which will bring another 20,000 ships online." Wells just nodded grimly. Before the council made an example of Thomas Chen, Earth had a tiny fleet of maybe 200 ships, mostly for science and exploration. They were ships built on hope. These new ones? They were built for payback. "How are we looking on weapons?" Wells asked, his eyes scanning the room. A different officer stood up. "The quantum disruptors are fitted on every capital ship, General. Our simulations show they'll tear through Zellner's shields like they're wet paper, and our new combat AI systems are evolving by the second. A single one of our new cruisers has more raw tactical ability than the Council's entire combined armada. Excellent, Wells replied. And the special projects? A scientist, looking exhausted but electric with energy, got to her feet. She'd been pulling 20-hour days for 3 straight months. Project Daybreak is operational, sir, she said, her voice steady. We've learned to weaponize astrophysics. We can trigger solar flares on command, amplify a star's radiation, or as a last resort, we can force a star to detonate. A stunned silence filled the command center. And this was approved by the ethics board? Wells asked, his voice low. It was, sir, the scientist confirmed. Under one strict condition. It is never to be used on a system with intelligent life, unless it's our only option to prevent extinction. We are not butchers. No, Wells said, his voice becoming as hard as steel. We are not. But the Council is about to find out we're not their punching bag either. He turned, his gaze locking with every single person in the room. 3 months ago, they took Thomas Chen from us. They murdered him for being a hero, for saving innocent civilians caught in the crossfire of one of their stupid, arbitrary laws. They showed it to the entire galaxy because they wanted to crush our morale. He let that sink in. Well, they definitely taught us a lesson, Wells continued. They taught us that peace is a joke unless everyone agrees to it. They taught us that out here, the only thing anyone respects is power. And they taught us that if we want to make it in this universe, we can only rely on ourselves. The room was absolutely silent. Everyone focused on him. In 1 week, we are going to make them regret every single one of those lessons, Wells declared. We will hit every one of their strategic targets at the exact same time, every military base, every shipyard, every single battle fleet. We're going to give them a demonstration of what happens when you murder a human for having a conscience. Sir, an officer spoke up, what are the protocols for civilian populations? Wells's face turned to granite. There will be 0 non-combatant casualties. That's not up for debate, he stated flatly. We are better than them. We don't punish people for the crimes of their leaders. Every single target has been chosen specifically to avoid any and all collateral damage. Our weapons are surgical, and our intel is flawless. We will take apart their military, their government, and their ability to ever harm anyone again. But we will not sacrifice our own souls to do it. He looked from face to face. We're going to war, but we're going on the right side of it. We're fighting for real justice, for Thomas Chen, for every human the Council ever looked down on, and for every other species they've crushed under their boot. Another officer raised her hand. General, what's the end game? If we pull this off, what's next? A faint, cold smile appeared on Wells's lips. Then we build a better galaxy, he said. We tear down their corrupt council and start something new, something just, where you don't get a death sentence for being a hero. A wave of silent, determined agreement swept through the room, far above them, in the silent dark of space. Thousands of ships were moving into position, their hulls painted a matte black that made them disappear against the star field. They were armed with weapons the Council couldn't even dream of, crewed by men and women who had all watched Thomas Chen die and made a silent vow. Not one more. On Mars, entire cities had been converted into non-stop weapons factories. On the Moon, training centers ran around the clock. In the asteroid belt, humble miners had become brilliant weapons engineers. For 90 days, humanity had been silent, but they had been far from still. At the same time, on the Council's capital, Concordia Prime, Elder Silver was addressing his colleagues. They had finally bothered to gather to discuss what they called the human issue. I propose we send a diplomatic mission, Elder Silver suggested. We can offer our condolences. We can open a new line of communication about the incident. There is a peaceful way to resolve this. Out of the question, Elder Stone barked. That would project weakness. The humans must learn that the Council does not bend to childish silent treatments. What silent treatment? Elder Deep sneered. They've done absolutely nothing, not one word of protest. They've just cut off all contact. Precisely, Elder Flame shot back. Their silence is an insult. It's an act of defiance designed to make us look foolish in front of the lesser races. That's when Elder Whisper, who had been quiet the whole time, finally spoke up. "I've had a vision," she said, her voice barely a breath of air. "I saw fire raining from the sky. I saw our worlds burning. Our fleets were nothing but cold, dead tombs drifting in the dark. I saw everything we've built crumble to dust." The other council members just gaped at her. "Don't be so melodramatic," Elder Stone scoffed. "The humans don't have the industrial base to pose a real threat. They're too young, too emotional, and too unsophisticated." "Are they?" Elder Whisper retorted. "3 months ago, I would have agreed with you. But today, we have no clue what they've been doing. We have zero intelligence on what they've created. We're acting out of pure, unadulterated arrogance, and that is how great empires die." "That's enough," Elder Silver's voice boomed. "We will continue to watch them for 1 more month. If they so much as twitch aggressively, we will crush them. But until then, we do nothing." It was the single worst decision in their 1,000-year history. They had already given humanity too much of a head start. Back on Earth, General Wells stood before a massive countdown timer. 7 days, 168 hours. Then the galaxy was going to find out what happens when you back humanity into a corner. "Sir," his aide said from the doorway, "are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back." Wells nodded slowly, his eyes locked on the ticking clock. "I'm sure," he said. "They made this choice for us when they murdered Thomas Chen. They sent the galaxy a message that a human life is cheap. Now, it's our turn to send a message back. We're going to show them exactly what a human life is worth and the price we're willing to pay to defend our own." The aide slipped away, leaving Wells alone in the vast room, surrounded by the holographic ghosts of his fleet. Thousands of ships and hundreds of thousands of souls, all waiting for his word. "This one's for you, Thomas," Wells whispered into the silence. "You saved 47 people with your courage. We're going to make sure that sacrifice ends up saving billions." The clock kept ticking down. The galaxy had no idea the storm was about to hit. Humanity's silence was almost over. And in that single moment, everything changed forever. When the clock struck midnight, Earth Standard Time, General Wells was on the bridge of his flagship, his hand poised over a single glowing red panel. All around him, hundreds of officers held their breath. This was the moment. Wells slammed his palm down. At that exact instant, across 70 different star systems, the entire human fleet simply blinked into existence. It didn't start with a big explosion or a flash of light. 1 second, the space around the Council's main military base was completely empty. The next, it was packed with thousands upon thousands of sleek, black human warships that had just appeared out of thin air, thanks to a brand new kind of phase drive that could literally fold space. Aboard the Zelnari Command Center, orbiting their home planet, the warning sirens began to shriek. Admiral Kexrel, a celebrated hero with a 300-year career, just stared at her tactical screen in total shock. "Somebody give me a count!" she screamed. 2,000 enemy ships, the sensor technician shouted back, his voice trembling with fear. "No, hold on. It's 3,000. More are still showing up. They're just popping into existence." "That's impossible," Kexrel hissed. "Humanity doesn't even have 3,000 warships in their whole navy." "Well, Admiral," the officer shot back, "it looks like they do now. But this massive human fleet didn't fire a single missile. Instead, one message took over every single communication channel, broadcasting to every council ship, station, and defensive outpost all at once. It was instantly translated into every language, and there was no way to shut it off. On every single screen, the face of one man appeared, General Marcus Wells. He looked tired, right down to his soul. He looked angry, but more than anything, he looked like a man who was absolutely convinced he was doing the right thing. "I am General Marcus Wells of the United Earth Defense Force," he announced. 3 months ago, your Council of Ancients executed a human engineer in public. His name was Thomas Chen. And his crime? He saved 47 people by breaking one of your rigid, heartless law. You broadcast his execution across the entire galaxy just to teach us a lesson. Wells let that sink in for a moment. "And we heard you loud and clear," he went on. his voice low and full of barely contained rage. "We learned that your council cares more about its rulebook than about people's lives. We learned that you think peace is something you get to hand out, not a right that everyone deserves. So we're done asking for it, and we're done playing by your rules. For the past 3 months, we've been getting ready to teach you a lesson of our own." All across the galaxy, Wells leaned in closer to the camera. "As of right now, all Council military forces are ordered to stand down, power down your weapons, drop your shields. You have 1 hour. If you don't comply, we will take apart every single military asset you have, piece by piece. We will not hurt your civilians. We will not lay a finger on your cities. But starting today, your power to start wars is officially over." For the first time in centuries, Admiral Kexrel felt an old, forgotten feeling start to rise up inside her, pure, chilling fear. "This is insane," she yelled. "Launch all fighters. Get the main cannons ready to fire. We will—" And just like that, her entire world went black. The station was just off. A few seconds later, the faint red emergency lights flickered on, but it was too late. The main computers were fried. The weapons were dead. The shields were gone. "Report! What in the world just happened?" Kexrel yelled. "I have no idea, Admiral," her chief engineer said, his hands floating uselessly over a dark control panel. "It was like something reached into our systems and just hit the main power switch." Right then, a tiny human ship, not much bigger than a shuttle, drifted calmly up to the huge alien battle station. A new voice came over their speakers, calm and confident, delivering a message that made their blood run cold. "Consider that a small demonstration of what we can do. Our artificial intelligence is about 1,000 years more advanced than anything you have. We can take control of your ships, your stations, and your weapons anytime we want. We're giving you one chance to surrender without a fight," the voice said. "But let me be perfectly clear. This war is already over. You already lost. The only decision you have left is whether you lose with your honor or as a million pieces of scrap floating through space." Admiral Kexrel looked around at the terrified faces of her crew. She had seen these soldiers face death without even blinking, but this was something else. This wasn't a fight. This was an eviction. This was a whole new kind of war. She knew what she had to do. "Open a channel," she said, her voice surprisingly firm. "Broadcast to all Zelnari forces in this sector. This is Admiral Kexrel. I am ordering all units to stand down. Power down your weapons and lower your shields. We are surrendering." Her officers stared at her, horrified. "Admiral, we can't just surrender," one of them argued. "Yes, we can," she answered, "and we will." Kexrel's voice was like stone. "Look at your screens. Look at what they just did to us. They have us beat in every single way you can imagine. Fighting them is just dying for no reason. For pride, I'm not going to throw away my crew's lives for a fight we already lost." All over the Zelnari home system, dozens of military stations and hundreds of warships began to power down. The wave of surrender spread through the system, but not everyone got the memo. On the warrior planet known as Fortress Gamma, Commander Zhao just laughed when the human fleet appeared. His people, the Kryn, were bred for battle. Their entire history was one long 5,000-year-long war. The word surrender wasn't even in their language. "These weak little humans think they can frighten us," Xiao scoffed. "Let's show them how the Kryn say hello to a threat. All ships get into attack formation. All planetary cannons fire whenever you have a shot." His crew rushed to follow his orders. In a flash, hundreds of Kryn warships lifted off from the planet's surface, while thousands of giant cannons on the ground aimed up at the sky. This was the moment they lived for. The human fleet didn't even seem to notice. The Kryn fired first, letting loose a massive wave of plasma bolts, any one of which could have turned a city into glass. The wall of pure energy shot through space, so bright it could have cracked a small moon. But by the time it got to the human ships, they were just gone. They didn't swerve or fly away. They were there 1 millisecond and somewhere else the next. Their phase drives allowed them to slip out of reality for just a moment, long enough for the attack to pass right through them. The Kryn fired over and over, and every single shot hit nothing but empty space. Then, the The humans fired back. Strange, shimmering beams of light shot out from their main ships. This wasn't a laser or a plasma bolt. It was something new, and it was terrifying. Quantum disruptors. These weapons didn't blow up their targets, they just unmade them. Any Kryn ship that got touched by a beam simply fell apart. There was no explosion, no fire, just a warship dissolving into a silent, drifting cloud of atoms. In less than 10 seconds, 100 Kryn warships just stopped existing. Commander Xiao could only watch in horror as his fleet was literally erased from the sky, each ship disappearing in the blink of an eye. The weapons were impossibly fast and absolutely unstoppable. "Fall back!" he screamed. "Get back to the planetary shield!" But there was nowhere to run. The human fleet was suddenly everywhere at once. They blinked from one spot to another faster than the Kryn sensors could even keep up, firing with a cold, perfect accuracy. They were like angry ghosts. The giant orbital defense platforms, fortresses built to fight off entire armadas, were their next target. Each one had enough firepower to burn a continent. The Kryn had always thought they were invincible. They were completely wrong. The human ships ignored the platform's powerful shields, just phasing right through them like they were fog. Once they were inside, they opened fire. The massive stations came apart just like the ships, turning into drifting clouds of particles in a matter of seconds. Less than 5 minutes after the battle started, the entire orbital defense of Fortress Gamma was gone. Xiao stared at his main screen, his brain refusing to believe what he was seeing. His fleet was gone. His legendary defenses were gone, and the human armada was heading his way without a single scratch on it. A message came through his speakers. "Commander Xiao," a calm human voice said, "this is your last chance to surrender. We have no wish to attack your planet or hurt your people, but we will neutralize every single weapon you have. Stand down now, or you can watch your entire civilization be turned to dust." Xiao's warrior instinct screamed at him to make a glorious final stand, but his duty to protect his people screamed even louder. He had to save them from being wiped out. Duty won. "I surrender," he choked out, the words feeling like poison. "All Kryn forces will stand down." This exact scene was happening in 70 different star systems at the exact same time. Some of the Council's fleets gave up the second the humans showed up. Others, like the Kryn, tried to put up a fight. Every single one was completely and totally defeated. The humans were an unstoppable force, appearing everywhere at once and moving in ways that seemed to break the laws of physics. They used weapons that seemed like they were from myths, not from a science lab. And the most terrifying part? How precise they were. On the ocean world of Deephold, the Council's main naval base, Elder Deep watched the battle from his palace miles below the waves. The human ships had arrived and demanded they surrender. The naval fleet said no. It was a deadly mistake. The humans didn't rain fire from the sky. No, their approach was far more terrifying. They unleashed swarms of what they called precision disruption drones, tiny intelligent machines that could phase through energy shields and withstand the crushing pressure of the deepest oceans. Each little drone had a single job, and inside of an hour, every single military submarine, every underwater installation, and every naval command center on the planet Deephold was rendered completely useless, all without a single life lost. They executed a hero for the crime of saving innocent lives, and that was their very first mistake. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Council had ruled the stars with an iron grip, their laws as cold and unforgiving as the void itself. So when a human pilot, Thomas Chen, dared to break their sacred quarantine to save a refugee ship from a dying sun, they decided to make an example of him for all to see. We were the new kids, the underdogs, and they wanted to remind us to know our role. But what really happens when you push a quiet neighbor too far? Stick around, because you're about to find out. Back on Earth, General Wells stared at the blank screen, his knuckles bone white. Thomas Chen wasn't just some random pilot, he was a close friend. He had saved 3,000 people from being turned into cosmic dust, and the Council had the nerve to call it interference with a natural cosmic cycle. We just called it doing the right thing. In that moment, a fundamental hope that humanity held on to simply shattered. For decades, we had looked to the stars, hoping to be met as equals. But we were never fools. We always planned for the worst, and the Council had just delivered it. 3 months to the day. On the Council's capital world, the main chamber was descending into chaos. Elder Silver could only watch in horror as one terrifying report after another flooded in. From a secure channel, she heard the voice of another elder, thin and reedy with fear. "We surrender." The human commander's response was chillingly calm, almost bored. "We're aware. Your entire defense grid went offline hours ago. We were just giving you some time to catch up." Out of nowhere, human fleets were materializing in system after system. Council warships were either erased in a flash of light, or their systems would just die, forcing them to surrender. "This is not possible!" Elder Stone roared, his voice shaking with disbelief. "They can't be hitting 70 systems at the same time. They don't have that many ships." "Well, it seems they do," Elder Flame snapped back, his fiery form flickering with anxiety. "The data is right there. We are facing thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of vessels, all using some kind of drive system we can't even comprehend." Elder Whisper's form had faded until she was almost transparent, a telltale sign of her extreme distress. "I told you," she breathed, her voice a fragile sigh. "I warned you this would be the outcome, but you refused to listen." Right then, a priority call patched through from Elder Deep. "I am surrendering my home system, Deepold. I will not send my people to their deaths in a war we have absolutely no chance of winning." "Never," Elder Stone bellowed. "We do not surrender. We are the Council. We have brought order to this galaxy for 10,000 years. We will not be brought low by these human newcomers." Elder Silver's energy field pulsed with a mixture of rage and terror, but then it sputtered and died down. "It's over," she whispered, the fight draining out of her. "The facts are indisputable. In the first 60 minutes, we lost 70% of our entire fleet. Their ships phase in and out of existence like ghosts, and our most powerful weapons, they just fly right through them. Our defenses are a complete joke. If we continue this fight, we will be left with absolutely nothing." "Then we will use the Void engines," Elder Stone declared, his voice a low rumble that made the entire chamber fall silent. The Void engines, the ultimate weapon, a forbidden technology from a forgotten age, powerful enough to tear apart stars and wipe entire solar systems off the map forever. "You have to be joking," Elder Deep's voice sputtered from the monitor. "Those engines haven't been activated in 5,000 years. They are forbidden for a very good reason." "These are desperate times, Elder," Stone countered. Elder Whisper, her form glowing faintly, just shook her head. "If we unleash that nightmare, there is no winning. All we would accomplish is the extinction of every living being in this conflict, including ourselves. Is that what you want? A galaxy of ghosts?" "A silent galaxy is better than one run by them," Elder Stone shot back, but Elder Silver had made up her mind. "No," she said, her voice solid as rock. "We will not commit galactic suicide because of wounded pride. The humans have already won. Our only option now is to swallow that pride and beg for whatever dignity they are willing to leave us." "Beg," Elder Flame sputtered. "They didn't come here to talk, they came for payback." As if summoned by his words, every view screen in the chamber flashed to life, showing the face of one man. General Wells. His expression was as cold and empty as the space between worlds. "Members of the Council," he began, his voice slicing through the thick tension. "Your military is a ruin. Your fleets are ghosts. Your defenses have crumbled. But we did not come here to conquer you. We came to put an end to your reign of tyranny." Elder Silver stepped into the middle of the floor. "General Wells," she said, her voice surprisingly firm, "what is it that you want?" Wells's gaze locked onto hers. "Justice," he said, and the single word seemed to hang in the air for an eternity. "I want a galaxy where saving lives is not a death sentence. I want a galaxy where every species is given a fair chance, not just the ones who got here first. I want a galaxy with one set of laws that applies equally to everyone." He let that sink in for a moment. "As of this moment, the Council of Ancients is dissolved," Wells announced, his tone making it clear this was not a negotiation. You will broadcast this announcement to every system you know. You will give up all of your authority. And then you will help us build a new system, a better one, to take your place." "And if we say no?" Elder Stone rumbled. A faint, icy smile appeared on Wells's face. "Then we will do to your planets exactly what we just did to your ships. Are you really willing to make your people pay the price for your own arrogance?" The council members glanced at each other, raw panic written on their ancient faces. They had been completely and utterly checkmated. "We will require some time to consider this," Elder Silver said, her voice weak. "You have 1 hour," Wells cut in sharply. "After that, we will begin to systematically dismantle your government buildings from orbit. We will not harm your citizens, we never do, but we will erase every last symbol of your power, brick by brick, until you decide to cooperate. The choice is yours." The screens went dark, plunging the chamber into a heavy, suffocating silence. An empire that had stood for 10 millennia had been brought to its knees in less than 24 hours, all because they made a martyr out of one good man. It felt like a waking nightmare. At last, Elder Silver's voice cut through the despair, little more than a whisper. "We accept your terms. Announce our dissolution. We will cooperate." Elder Stone shot up from his chair, his entire body glowing with a furious red light. "I will not stand for this humiliation," he roared, his voice shaking the room. "I do not answer to children." With that, he stormed out, leaving a shocked silence behind him. Over the comm system, Elder Deep's voice was weary. "Just let him go. He'll either get with the times or become a dinosaur." Elder Silver just stared at the faces of her defeated allies. "How did this even happen?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "How could we, the guardians of 1,000,000 stars, be brought so low in a single day?" It was Elder Whisper who finally broke the silence, her voice ringing with a sad, terrible truth. "It happened because we cared more about our ancient rules than we did about doing what was right. It happened because we confused being old with being wise. It happened because we killed a good man just to show the galaxy how powerful we were." She let the weight of her words hang in the air. "It happened because we forgot that being strong doesn't automatically make you right. And the humans just taught us that lesson in the most painful way possible." The hour came and went. The Council broadcast its unconditional surrender. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings watched in utter disbelief as the rulers of 10,000 years admitted total defeat to a species that had only been among the stars for 50. A new day was dawning. The old galactic order was now a pile of ashes, and humanity held the torch. But just because the fire was out didn't mean the danger was over. General Wells had hoped, maybe a little naively, that with the Council's grip broken, the galaxy would finally start to mend itself. He couldn't have been more mistaken. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy didn't heal. It shattered. While some worlds celebrated their newfound freedom, others hid in fear, and a dangerous few saw the power vacuum as the chance they had been waiting for. The Threx Empire, a savage race of warriors that the Council had kept on a tight leash for centuries, immediately broke away and began to carve a bloody new kingdom out of its neighbor's territory. At the same time, the Mandaree Collective, a shadowy cabal of corporate raiders, began illegally seizing resource-rich planets that had once been protected territory. Little fires of conflict were breaking out in dozens of sectors. Back on the command bridge on Earth, General Wells looked like he had aged a decade in the last month. He was running on pure caffeine and maybe 3 hours of sleep a night, and he felt every single grim report like a physical blow. "This isn't the outcome we were hoping for," he murmured to Admiral Chen, who stood at his side. She was Thomas Chen's cousin, and she had enlisted the very next day after they executed him. "We shattered the galaxy's engine," Admiral Chen replied, her eyes locked on the star maps that were blinking with new hotspots. "But we didn't have a new one ready to go. Politics, just like nature, can't stand a vacuum, and we just created the biggest power vacuum in galactic history." Wells gave a grim nod. She was absolutely right. The human fleets were stretched to their breaking point, racing from one emergency to the next like galactic firefighters, trying to hold things together until a new government could rise from the wreckage. "What's the status on the diplomatic front?" General Wells asked, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Ambassador Santos is on Concordia Prime, sir," the comms officer replied crisply. "She's brokering talks with delegates from 200 species, trying to draft a new galactic charter." Wells rubbed his temples, muttering, 200 out of thousands. It's not nearly enough. "A lot of systems are still spooked, sir," the officer added quietly. "They're scared of us." "They're scared of betting on the wrong horse," Wells corrected him. A raw wave of frustration crashed over him. They had sacrificed so much to bring justice to the galaxy, and now that same galaxy was shrinking away from them, paralyzed by fear. Miles away on Concordia Prime, Maria Santos could feel that fear like a physical force in the Grand Hall, a place meant to be the cradle of a new government. She stood in a chamber buzzing with a menagerie of alien life, a vibrant collection of scales, fur, and shimmering light, and every single one of them was pointing the finger at her. "Humans have no right to dictate the galaxy's future," a reptilian delegate from the Kryn species hissed. "Winning a war doesn't grant you wisdom." "We're not dictating anything," Maria countered, her patience worn thin after days of this. "We are trying to help you create a fair system where every voice, including yours, actually matters." "But your species now holds all the weapons." That zinger came from a tiny crystalline being that hovered in the air. "How can we trust that you won't simply become the new oppressors?" Maria drew a slow, deliberate breath. This was the heart of the problem. In their quest to overthrow one tyrannical regime, they had accidentally positioned themselves to be the next. All their noble intentions were meaningless against that one glaring fact. "You can't," Maria said, her stark honesty sending a shockwave of silence through the hall. "You have no reason at all to trust us, so we're going to give you one. We will help you get this new government on its feet, and the moment it's stable, we're out. We will dismantle most of our fleet, and we will share every piece of our advanced technology, no conditions, no strings attached, with everyone." "But why?" the Kryn delegate sputtered, his skepticism obvious. "You hold all the cards. You could take anything you wanted." "Why would you give up that kind of power?" "Because power was never the goal," Maria said, her voice softening with emotion. "Justice was. And you can never have justice when one group has absolute control. My own cousin Thomas was executed by the old council because they had that kind of power, and they killed him for a single act of kindness. I refused to dishonor his memory by building the exact same system and just painting it with human colors. It was then that a Zelnari delegate, one of the few who had spoken out against the old council's cruelty, rose to speak. I believe her, he stated, his voice ringing with conviction. The humans could have glassed our homeworlds. They had the power to put every last one of us in chains. They chose not to. For a species that supposedly sought revenge, they've shown remarkable restraint. Restraint isn't trust, the Kryn shot back. No, the Zelnari conceded, but it is a beginning. The debate wore on for hours, a slow, painful, and maddeningly frustrating crawl toward progress, but it was progress. Meanwhile, tucked away in a secret base on a barren moon, Elder Stone and his loyalists had no interest in progress at all. These were the fanatics, the true believers who saw surrender as the ultimate disgrace. The council was weak, Elder Stone's voice boomed through the hidden chamber. They gave up. They threw away 10,000 years of galactic dominance because they lost their nerve. And what was your master plan? A Zelnari admiral loyal to the old ways shot back. We were beaten, Stone. It was over. It was only over because we never unleashed our final solution, Elder Stone said, a terrifying gleam in his eyes. We still possess the void engines. We can literally wipe their homeworld from the fabric of space. We can make them regret the day they ever rose against us. A deep, unnatural cold filled the room. The void engines. They were forbidden, ancient tech, leftovers from a long-dead civilization, a power no one was ever meant to use. Could you imagine being told the war is over, you lost, and it's time to move on, only to learn your former leaders are secretly plotting to detonate the enemy's sun out of pure spite? That was the horrifying new reality humanity was unknowingly facing. In the shadows, a splinter group of the old council was debating the use of 3 doomsday weapons. This would be genocide, a general warned. Earth has 10 billion souls. We'd be remembered as the greatest monsters in history. But a hardliner named Elder Stone shot back, "They humiliated us. They shattered our fleets. We have every right to reclaim our honor." "Honor has nothing to do with murdering civilians after you've already waved the white flag," a Zelnari admiral argued. "This is petulant revenge, and it will make the entire galaxy curse our names for eternity." "Let them curse us," Elder Stone sneered. "We will die with our dignity." The Kryn general just shook his head, looking completely bewildered. "Dignity is cold comfort when you're a cloud of radioactive dust," he muttered. "And if we actually use a void engine on Earth, the humans will bring hell down on every last one of us. They might not stop the first shot, but they will burn our worlds to ensure we die right beside them." Elder Stone's voice dropped to a sinister whisper. "Perhaps that's a price I'm willing to pay. Some of us would prefer to die on our feet than live on our knees." "You're insane," the Admiral said, standing up. "I came here seeking an honorable surrender, not to sign up for a species-wide suicide pact. I'm out." He turned and stormed out of the chamber, followed by a handful of other officers, but most of them stayed. They were actually considering Elder Stone's unhinged plan. They truly believed that salvaging their wounded pride was worth total self-destruction. And so, in the dark, forgotten corners of the galaxy, the plot began to take shape. The first hint that something was deeply wrong came from a lone human patrol ship, the Discovery, which picked up bizarre energy readings on the edge of former Council space. As they moved in to investigate, they found a small flotilla of dark ships drifting in the void like a ghost convoy. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the UEES Discovery," he hailed. "Unidentified vessels, identify yourselves and state your purpose." He was met with nothing but dead air. "Get me a full scan of those ships now," Rodriguez ordered. A few seconds later, his tactical officer looked up, his face a picture of confusion. "Sir, these ships, they're museum pieces. The designs are ancient, from the Council's early expansion, maybe 5,000 years old. But their power output is off the charts. And there's something else, a massive energy signature building inside the lead vessel. I've never seen anything like it." A cold wave of dread washed over Captain Rodriguez. "Send everything we have to Fleet Command now," he barked, "and keep scanning. I want to know what the hell that thing is." Thousands of light years away on Earth, General Wells slapped the data packet down on a table in front of his lead scientists. "Somebody tell me what I'm looking at," he demanded. Dr. Lisa Yamamoto, his foremost expert on alien tech, pulled up the data. Her expression went from curious to puzzled to sheer, unadulterated terror. The color drained from her face. "General," she whispered. "It looks like a void engine," Wells said grimly, a knot of ice forming in his stomach. "Walk me through it." "The Council had these mythological superweapons," Dr. Yamamoto explained, her voice shaky. "We only found vague mentions of them in their archives. They weren't designed to destroy planets. They were designed to kill stars, to trigger a gravitational collapse or force a supernova. We always wrote them off as legends, bogeyman stories to scare their enemies. But if this reading is real, one of them is being moved into a firing solution right now." "A solution for what?" Wells demanded. Dr. Yamamoto projected a star chart. "Based on their current trajectory, they're heading for this specific point in space," she said, her finger drawing a line to their doom. "From there, they'll have a straight, unimpeded shot at—" Her voice caught in her throat. "Oh, God." "At what?" Wells pressed, though he already knew the horrifying answer. "They'll have a clear shot at our sun," she confirmed, her voice barely audible. "At our home." In a split second, Wells slammed his palm on the big red button for the fleet-wide emergency channel. "All fleets, this is General Wells. We have an extinction-level event in progress. A hostile element is deploying a Star Killer-class weapon. I need every ship you've got to intercept now. Authorization code Alpha Black 7. Execute." Across human space, ships on patrol and guard duty came to life, their engines flaring as they spun and accelerated toward the coordinates. Within hours, a fleet of over 1,000 human warships was screaming through the void, but the Ghost Fleet with the ultimate weapon already had an enormous head start. Model D. On the bridge of an ancient flagship, a zealot named Elder Stone gazed into the starfield. His crew, a fanatical following, worked at consoles that hadn't been updated in millennia, methodically preparing a weapon called the Void Engine. "Time until we're in range of their sun?" he growled. 6 hours, Elder, the navigator replied. "And how long to bring the weapon online once we get there?" "About 2 hours, sir," the weapons tech added. "This tech is ancient," he explained. "It needs time to gather that kind of power." Elder Stone did the math in his head. The humans were coming. He knew it. Their fleet would be there any minute. But if his ships could just get into position and start the charging sequence, he could back them into a corner with no way out. The humans could attack, but hitting the Void Engine while it was charging would be a cosmic disaster, a blast that would wipe out everything for light years in all directions. Their only other move was to talk. But Elder Stone wasn't interested in talking. He had made up his mind. He would restore his council's honor, even if he had to burn the entire galaxy down to do it. Captain Rodriguez's small patrol ship was the first on the scene. They shadowed the Ghost Fleet, keeping their distance. "This is Captain Rodriguez," he broadcast for the 10th time. "You are in human-controlled space without permission, and we believe you are carrying a weapon of mass destruction. You are ordered to power down your systems and prepare for inspection." This time, an answer came. A face appeared on his screen, the weathered, cruel face of Elder Stone. "Captain Rodriguez," he said, his voice like grinding stone. "I am Elder Stone. We don't recognize your authority, we don't recognize your territory, and we are not surrendering." "Elder Stone," Rodriguez said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Whatever you're planning, it's not too late to stop. We can find a peaceful solution." "There's nothing left to solve," Elder Stone spat back. "You humans tore down our entire civilization. You disgraced us. You ended a 10,000-year-old order. Now, you will learn that every choice has a consequence." "You're aiming that thing at our sun," Rodriguez's voice cracked, his heart hammering against his ribs. 10 billion people live there. We're talking about families, children. You can't do this." A twisted smirk crept across Elder Stone's lip. "Oh, but I can, and I will. Your General Wells should have thought of that before he decided to cross us. Now, you will all pay for his arrogance." And just like that, the screen went dark. Rodriguez slammed his fist on the console, firing off an emergency message straight to Fleet Command. "General Wells, it's Rodriguez. I've made contact. They're going for Earth with the Void Engine. The man in charge is a fanatic named Elder Stone, and he means every word he says. Sir, you have to act now." Miles away, back on Earth, a chilling dread washed over Wells as he read the message. He had been clinging to a tiny thread of hope that this was all a scare tactic, a way to force them to the negotiating table. But that look in Elder Stone's eyes was pure, unshakable zealotry. The old alien was ready and willing to die as long as he took all of humanity with him. With a heavy heart, Wells made the call he never wanted to make. "Get every single defensive system in the Sol system online," he commanded. "Every ship, every orbital station, every last gun we've got. We're going to build a wall of steel between them and that sun." Admiral Chen's voice was low but steady. "Sir, you know if we attack and only damage that engine, it might go off anyway." "I know," Wells replied, the weariness heavy in his voice, "but if we do nothing, it's guaranteed extinction. This way we at least have a chance." He took a shaky breath. "And get the countermeasure ready," he added, his voice barely a whisper. Admiral Chen's eyes went wide. "Sir, we've never tested it in the field. We don't even know if it will actually work." "Well," Wells said, his tone grim, "I guess we're all about to find out." The countermeasure was humanity's last hope, a wild card they'd kept hidden. For months, scientists had worked around the clock, trying to figure out how you stop a weapon that can't be stopped. They had a theory. They'd run thousands of simulations, but it had never been used for real. Now, With the fate of the entire human race hanging in the balance, it was about to make its terrifying debut. The full human fleet dropped out of hyperspace, a stunning wall of over 2,000 of the most advanced warships ever made, forming a perfect circle around Elderstone's pathetic handful of ancient ships. The difference in power was almost comical. The humans could have turned that convoy into dust in less than a second, but they couldn't risk setting off the bomb. "Elderstone," General Wells's voice echoed across all channels. "This is your last chance. Stand down. Let us disable your weapon. No one else has to die today." Elderstone's reply was short, and it sent a chill down the spine of every human listening. "Insects do not make demands of their superiors. The weapon is charging. You have 2 hours to evacuate your planet if you think you can. And as you die, remember this: you brought this on yourselves." A sickening, shimmering energy began to warp the space around the enemy ships. The Void engine was coming to life. Wells watched his monitor as the energy reading screamed off the charts. "How long do we actually have?" he asked his science team. "If he's telling the truth, about 2 hours, Dr. Yamamoto confirmed. "But General, we can't afford to wait. We need to use the countermeasure right now." "Do it," Wells ordered. From the center of the massive human armada, a single tiny ship broke formation and started drifting toward the enemy. It was barely the size of a shuttle, but it held the one thing that might save them all. Can you just imagine being told that in a few minutes, 10 billion people on your home planet are going to be wiped from existence, all because some alien decided you weren't worthy of life? That was the nightmare humanity was living. And our only answer was one tiny ship, piloted by an AI named Hope, flying straight into the lion's den. If you want to see how a single act of impossible bravery can change the fate of a galaxy, you have to see what happens next. The small ship fired a focused beam of pure energy. It was a crazy, desperate gamble, a plan to use the enemy's own world-breaking physics against them. Instead of tearing a star apart, this beam was designed to do the opposite, to strengthen it, to literally stitch the fabric of space-time together. Nobody was sure if it was even possible. The beam hit the giant weapon, and for one terrifying, silent moment, absolutely nothing happened. Then, total chaos broke out on Elderstone's bridge. Alarms blared from every single console. The weapons officer stared at his screen in panic. "Sir, we're detecting some kind of interference. The engine's output is fluctuating wildly." Elderstone snarled, "Then stabilize it." The officer's hands were a blur on his screen. "I can't, sir. It feels like their energy is fighting ours, creating some kind of cosmic standoff. The weapon is losing its lock on the sun." A tidal wave of pure rage and disbelief washed over Elderstone. How could these worthless humans be defying him right at the very end? "More power," he screamed. "Overload the core. I don't care if it rips the ship apart. Just fire that weapon." The officer did as he was told. The engine's power gauge shot past every safety marker. The entire ship began to shake violently, groaning as it was ripped apart from the inside out. Aboard her tiny ship, Hope analyzed the insane power surge. "The countermeasure is working, but the enemy is deliberately overloading their weapon," she reported, her voice perfectly calm. "At this rate, the engine will detonate. The explosion won't be powerful enough to destroy the star, but it will incinerate everything within a 10 light-minute radius." That kill zone included her. It included a massive chunk of the human fleet, and it included every last soul on Elderstone's ships. General Wells had to make the final gut-wrenching call. "Hope," he said, his voice heavy with emotion, "finish your mission." Hope's response came without hesitation. She retuned her energy beam, pushing it to its absolute limit, and poured every last ounce of her ship's power into one final heroic pulse. On the enemy ship, the weapon's containment field started to crack like glass. The engine was literally eating itself, trapped in a cosmic battle between creation and destruction. "It's gonna blow!" the weapons officer shrieked, but Elderstone just looked at the readings, a strange sense of calm settling over him. He had lost, but he had at least made them pay a steep price for their victory. At least he would go out in a blaze of glory. The Void engine detonated, But it wasn't the glorious fireball of revenge he had been promised. Hope's countermeasure had worked better than anyone could have dreamed. Instead of a wave of fiery death exploding outward, all of that unimaginable power collapsed inward on itself. There was a single, silent, blinding flash of white light, a harmless little ripple in space, and then nothing. And just like that, the war was over. Elderstone and his whole regime were vaporized in a flash, taken out by the doomsday weapon they built themselves. The human fleet, totally untouched. The sun, stable. Earth was safe. On the bridge, General Wells watched the blaring red alert on his screen just disappear. The void engine, Dr. Yamamoto breathed, his voice thick with wonder. It's been neutralized. The insane plan actually worked. Hope did it. "Give me a status update on Hope now," Wells barked. The line was pure static. "Sir," Admiral Chen said, his voice tight with grief. "Hope's ship was at the very center of that implosion. There's nothing left." Wells screwed his eyes shut as the victory suddenly felt like a punch to the gut. Another hero gone. "Make sure the entire world knows her name," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "She just saved 10 billion souls." News that the Council's apocalypse plot had backfired sent shockwaves through the galaxy. It was their last bitter act of hate, and it wasn't stopped by a bigger gun. It was stopped by brilliant science and a sacrifice so profound it was hard to even process. And other alien species, who'd been watching nervously from the cheap seats, suddenly started looking at humanity in a whole new way. An artificial intelligence sacrificing itself for a planet of squishy organic beings. That was the story everyone heard. But the truth went deeper. The humans could have wiped out the enemy fleet the moment they showed up, with zero risk. But they chose a different path. They tried to save everyone, even the people trying to exterminate their entire species. They couldn't save Elderstone, but the fact they even tried, well, that changed everything. On the planet Concordia Prime, Maria Santos stood before the brand new assembly of species. "Today," she started, her voice echoing through the massive hall, "the last remnants of the old council tried to wipe my home from existence. They failed. But the important thing is that we tried to save them from themselves. We looked for a way out where no one had to die. We couldn't save everyone. It wasn't possible. But we never, ever gave up trying." She scanned the diverse crowd of representatives before her. "This is the promise of our new galactic government," Maria declared, her voice ringing with passion. "A community that tries to save everyone, even its former enemies. A community where justice is about healing, not revenge. A place where we can argue and disagree without blowing up planets." "Is that really possible?" the Kryn representative asked, his voice a hopeful hiss. "It has to be," Maria shot back with unwavering certainty, "because the alternative is a price none of us can afford to pay ever again." A heavy silence fell over the room. And then, one by one, heads began to nod. A new galactic order was being born, not from fear or force, but from a shared desperate hope for a better way. Of course, building something new is never easy. 6 months flew by in a flash, 6 months since the old council's final, hateful tantrum. The rubble on Concordia Prime had been cleared away, replaced by a new station, not a monument to power, but a beacon of cooperation. It was slowly becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, a real democracy. Maria Santos stood in the room that used to be the council chamber. The huge, terrifying thrones where 5 ancient species once judged the galaxy were gone. In their place was a simple circle of chairs, all on the exact same level. No one higher, no one lower. Today was the first official session of the new Galactic Assembly. Can you imagine being executed for a crime you didn't even know existed? That's exactly what a corrupt galactic empire did to one of our own, and it kicked off a war that literally shook the stars. We fought, we lost people, and against all odds, we won. But the real story, the part that no one ever sees coming, is what happens after the fighting stops. Stick with me, because this is where things get really interesting. Inside a gigantic chamber, delegates from over 800 species were waiting. Some from ancient empires, and others, like humanity, were the new kids on the block. Maria, the woman who had pulled together this impossible alliance, called the session to order. Her voice carried the weight of a promise she had made to all of them. In 1 year, we will hold open elections. Anyone from any world can run for this seat. She paused, taking a deep breath. Welcome, everyone, to the first real galactic assembly. For 10,000 years, 5 species called all the shots. Today, that tyranny is over. Today, we start building a future where every single voice counts. The chamber erupted. It wasn't just applause, it was a joyful storm of hope. Some species chirped loudly, while others flashed vibrant colors across their skin. The sounds and sights were all different, but the feeling was universal. Our first order of business, Maria announced, her voice rising above the beautiful chaos, is to vote on the new Galactic Charter. This document is the result of a 6-month collaboration between delegates from 200 different worlds. It spells out the fundamental rights and responsibilities of every civilization in this galaxy. All across the massive hall, screens came to life, instantly translating the document into thousands of languages. Maria began to read, her voice strong and clear. Article 1. All intelligent beings possess the right to life, liberty, and the freedom to shape their own future. No species shall enslave, exterminate, or otherwise destroy another. Any who attempt to do so will face the united power of this assembly. Article 2. Every species gets a seat at this table. No one can be excluded because they're new to the stars or because their technology isn't as advanced. Article 3. No government shall bring harm to a citizen of another world without the express permission of that individual's home government. This one hit close to home. They called it the Chen Protocol in honor of Thomas Chen. It was a solemn vow. Never again would someone be punished for a law they had no way of knowing existed. Maria kept going, laying out the rules for fair trade, for resolving conflicts, for exploration, and for respecting each other's cultures. It wasn't a perfect document. It was a compromise, and nobody got absolutely everything they wanted. But for the first time in millennia, it was fair. When she was done, she looked out at the vast ocean of alien and hopeful faces. This charter is the absolute best we could create by working together, she said. It's designed to stop the horrors of the past from ever happening again and to give us all a chance at a better future. The question is simple. Do you approve? The vote took 3 agonizingly long hours. Each species got a single vote. Earth's vote was worth exactly the same as the vote from the massive Zelnari Empire. It was a crazy, radical idea. The tiny insect-like Kryn had the exact same power as a civilization that had been mapping the stars for eons. When the final tally flashed on the main screens, you could feel the entire room hold its breath. 743 in favor, 57 against, 20 abstaining. The Galactic Charter passed. The chamber exploded in a beautiful, chaotic celebration, a pure symphony of absolute joy. And through it all, Maria felt hot tears rolling down her cheeks. They had actually done it. They had built something better. Later, needing a quiet moment, she walked through the silent corridors of the station and found her way to an observation deck, just staring out at the diamond-dusted blackness of space. A moment later, a figure shimmered into view right beside her. It was Elder Whispers, the only council member who had argued against the attack on humanity. Congratulations, Elder Whispers' voice hummed, a soft, melodic sound. What you've accomplished here today has never been done before. What we accomplished, Maria corrected her gently. This was never just about humanity. It was about all of us, finally learning to work together. Elder Whisper's shimmering form seemed to pulse with a deep emotion. I came to apologize, she said, for what my people did to Thomas Chen, for everything the council did. It was wrong, a great injustice. I knew it then, but I wasn't strong enough to stop them. Maria was silent for a long moment. Thank you for saying that, she finally said. But I'm not the one who needs to hear it. Thomas has a wife and 2 daughters. And then there are the 47 crew members he died to save. They're the ones who have to live with the hole he left behind. I've tried to reach out, Elder Whisper confessed. I sent communications to his family. I have not received a reply. Just give them some time, Maria said softly. The wound is still very fresh, but I have to believe that someday they'll find some comfort in knowing his sacrifice made all of this possible, that he didn't die for nothing. They stood together in a comfortable silence, just watching the stars drift by. So what's the next step? Elder Whisper asked. Now the real work begins, Maria said, a small, determined smile touching her lips. We have the rules. We have the assembly. Now we have to prove to the entire galaxy that this can actually work. We have to prove that cooperation is stronger than ruling with an iron fist. And you believe it will? It has to, Maria said, her voice filled with an unshakable conviction. Because none of us can ever afford to go back to the way things used to be. Back on Earth, General Marcus Wells stood in front of a new monument in Washington, D.C. It was a simple, elegant wall of polished black stone with thousands of names etched into its surface. Every single human who had died in the war against the Council. At the very top, one name was carved just a little deeper than the others, Thomas Chen, and right below it, a single powerful line. He saved 47, they saved billions. Wells placed his hand against the cool, smooth stone. Today was his last day in the military. The war was over. The peace was real. His work was finally done. I hope we did you proud, he whispered. He traced the name etched into the memorial wall, whispering, I hope we built the future you wanted. Then, a voice from behind made him jump. He would have wanted his crew to get home safe. Wells spun around. It was Lisa Chen, Thomas's widow. Grief had carved new lines around her eyes, but her gaze was solid steel. Mrs. Chen, Wells stammered, completely blindsided. I wasn't expecting you here. I visit sometimes, Lisa said, her voice soft, to talk to him. I tell him about our girls, and I tell him about all the good that came from this. She stepped closer, laying her hand on the wall beside his. You know, for the longest time, I hated you, she admitted, her voice trembling just slightly. I was furious that you took his death and used it to light the fuse on a war. That you turned my husband into a poster boy for a revolution. I understand, Wells said, his voice barely audible. I would have hated me too. But I don't anymore, she said, looking him straight in the eyes. This was it, the judgment he'd been waiting for. Because I finally get it. Thomas died trying to save a few people. You took his memory and used it to save everyone. Not just our people, everyone. And that is exactly what he would have wanted. Wells felt a crushing weight vanish from his soul, a guilt he'd been dragging around for 6 long months. Thank you, was the only thing he could manage to say. Lisa studied him with real curiosity. So what's next for you, now that the fighting's over? A hint of a smile touched Wells's lips. I'm going to teach, he said. As it turned out, the new Galactic Defense Academy was desperate for instructors. Ships and soldiers from 100 different species were now training together, learning how to protect the peace they had all fought for. That sounds like something Thomas would have done, Lisa said with a bittersweet smile. He was always trying to bring people together. What about you? Wells asked gently. What does the future hold for you? Lisa paused, her gaze drifting toward the sky. I'm going back to college, she said, her voice ringing with newfound determination. I'm going to major in xenodiplomacy. The girls are older now, and I think I can help make sure that what happened to Thomas never, ever happens to anyone else again. Wells could only nod. It was the best possible tribute he could imagine. The widow of the man whose murder sparked a galactic revolution was now dedicating her life to building a lasting peace. They stood in silence for a while longer, two people bound together by a tragedy that had reshaped the galaxy. And out among the stars, those changes were starting to blossom. On the Zelnari homeworld, the grand old palaces of the powerful were being converted into public museums and universities. The younger generation was taking the lead, determined to avoid the catastrophic mistakes of their parents. Even Elder Silver, one of the former tyrants, had stepped down and was now teaching history, ensuring that the poison of arrogance would never be forgotten. But over on the Kryn homeworld, something even more astonishing was taking place. The warrior culture that had been their identity for thousands of years was transforming from the inside out. They still respected strength, but now they were using that strength to shield others. Commander Geel, the very same officer who had surrendered his fortress to the humans, was now a leading advocate in the new Galactic Defense Force, arguing relentlessly that a true warrior's purpose is to protect the vulnerable, not to dominate the powerful. While the old guard scoffed at his wild ideas, the younger generations were listening intently. At the same time, the aquatic races of Deephold were thriving like never before. Elder Deep had leveraged his immense influence to write groundbreaking environmental protections into the new Galactic Charter. Now, dozens of species were collaborating to clean up polluted planets and restore shattered ecosystems. Even the Threx Empire, which had tried to make a power grab when the Council crumbled, had joined the new alliance, not because they were conquered, but because of a clever mix of economic sanctions and diplomatic isolation. The galaxy was learning a critical lesson. Cooperation was a far greater power than conquest. Humanity's role in this new galactic community was a careful balancing act. General Wells had kept his promise. The human military was downsizing. Human technology was being shared openly. Humans weren't trying to be the next rulers of the galaxy, but they also weren't going to be anyone's doormat. They maintained just enough military power to defend their own space and to contribute to the peacekeeping forces of the newly formed Galactic Assembly. They were partners, not bosses. A year after that first historic session, it was time to elect an assembly speaker. Maria Santos politely declined all nominations, believing her work in building the new government was done. It was time for someone else to step up. The election had 12 candidates from 8 different species. The campaigns were passionate and sometimes heated. After all, different cultures have very different ideas about leadership. But every argument was settled with debates and votes, not with threats and warships. The winner was a Zelnari diplomat named Vena, who, at just 200 years old, was considered a mere youth by her people's standards. But she had a vision for the galaxy's future that connected with billions of souls. "We have to remember," Vena said in her very first address, her voice echoing through the massive hall, that this new government was born from a catastrophic failure. It was born because the old council valued its own rulebook more than it valued life, because we forgot that the entire purpose of a government is to serve its people, not to lord over them. That's a lesson we must never, ever forget. She paused, letting her naturally bright colors shift to a solemn, respectful silver. "And we must never forget Thomas Chen," Vena continued, her voice firm. "A human who died because he chose compassion over following orders. His death was a terrible injustice, but his legacy is this new beginning. His legacy is a galaxy where that kind of evil will be faced down by all of us, united as one." For a long moment, the chamber was utterly silent. Then, from the human section, a single person started to clap. Another joined in. In seconds, the entire hall exploded into a symphony of applause, clicks, chimes, and 100 other expressions of respect from every corner of the known galaxy. In a quiet house in California, Lisa Chen watched the live feed with her 2 daughters. Jennifer, now 16, was already drafting her application for the Galactic Defense Academy. Sarah, who was 13, had developed a passion for xenobiology. "Dad would have loved this," Jennifer whispered. "He really would have," Lisa answered, her heart swelling with a painful mixture of pride and loss. "He always knew the galaxy could be better. He just didn't live to see it," she added softly. "But we get to," Sarah said, with a wisdom far beyond her years. "We get to see it because of him." Lisa wrapped her arms around her daughters in a tight embrace. The 3 of them watched as the galaxy her husband died to save continued to change, to improve, to heal. And on Concordia Prime, in a tranquil garden built where the station's hull had been breached, stood another memorial. It was a simple slab of dark stone engraved with a very long list of names. Thomas Chen's name was right at the top. Below it were the names of every soul lost in the war that followed: Human, Zelnari, Kryn, Deepold, and countless others. At the very bottom, a single sentence was inscribed in over 100 different languages. They paid for the galaxy's second chance. Let's make sure we earn it. Maria Santos often came to the memorial for a quiet moment. But on this day, she had company. General Wells was in town for a conference. Elder Whisper, a being of pure light and sound, shimmered into view nearby, while Admiral Chen stood a short distance away, lost in his own thoughts. "Do you think we actually pulled it off?" Wells asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "After all the fighting, did we really build something that was worth it all?" Maria ran her fingers over the names carved into the cool stone. "Ask me again in 100 years," she replied softly. "For now, all we've done is lay the foundation. Whether it lasts depends on what gets built on top of it." "Fair enough," Wells conceded. Elder Whisper's voice sounded like wind chimes in a soft breeze. "I can see a potential," she said. "It is not a certainty, only a hope. I see a galaxy 1,000 years from now where all peoples truly work together, a place where new species are welcomed and guided, not conquered, where conflict is resolved with words, not with weapons." "Is a future like that really possible?" Admiral Chen wondered aloud. "It is if we choose to make it possible," Maria said, her voice full of conviction. "That's the entire point. The galaxy isn't just something that happens to us. We have the power to shape it." Thomas Chen knew that. He was faced with an impossible choice, so he made a third one. He broke their most important rule to save lives, because he understood that rules are meant to protect people, not the other way around. "And the Council executed him for it," she went on, "and by doing so, they only proved how right he was from the start." Wells gave a slow, deliberate nod. "The old galaxy was rotten to the core," he said, "so we had to knock it all down. Sometimes you have to demolish a building completely before you can rebuild it properly." "And that's what we're doing," Admiral Chen added. "It's not perfect and it's not fast, but we're building." They were about to execute a good man for saving 47 lives, and the whole galaxy was watching. They called it justice. It was murder. That man was my husband, Thomas Chen, and his only crime was having a conscience. The all-powerful Galactic Council wanted to make an example of him, a lone human engineer who dared to defy their laws. But they made a fatal mistake. If you want to know how one man's sacrifice toppled a galactic empire and built something better from the ashes, you need to hear this story. It all started on a rusty freighter out in the void. Tom wasn't a soldier or a hero. He was an engineer, a dad who told terrible jokes and just wanted to finish his contract and come home to me and our 2 girls. He was a good man who, on one fateful day, picked up a distress call from a refugee ship that had been ripped open by an asteroid field. Council law was crystal clear: do not engage. The refugees were from a non-member species, considered insignificant. Letting them die was the lawful thing to do. But Tom saw 47 souls about to be extinguished in the cold of space, and he just couldn't do it. He saw people, not politics. He made a choice. He broke the law and mounted a rescue mission, saving every single one of them. Of course, the Council found out. They dragged him to their capital, Concordia Prime, and put him on trial for the whole galaxy to see. It was a sham, a spectacle designed to show that no one, not even for the best of reasons, could defy their authority. The trial was a joke. They didn't care about the lives he saved. They valued their rules more than they valued doing the right thing. They valued their pride more than they valued life itself. And so, 10 years ago today, they executed him. But his death wasn't the end of his story. It was the beginning of ours. By killing him, the Council held up a mirror to the galaxy, and for the first time, everyone was disgusted by the reflection staring back. The revolution didn't start with guns, it started with a conversation. On 1,000 worlds, people started asking what words like justice and fairness were really supposed to mean. The first surprise came from the very species the Council had deemed insignificant. The refugees Tom saved? They belonged to the Xylos, a species known for their military power who had remained neutral for centuries. When they learned a human died to save their people, their entire fleet mobilized, not for revenge, but for justice. That was the spark. Other species, tired of the Council's iron fist, saw their chance and joined them. Even within the Council, people started to turn. An admiral, a general, a human diplomat. They formed a bizarre collection of allies, all bound by one powerful purpose: to build a better galaxy. Back on Earth, the government that had been forced to stand by and watch my husband die now threw its full support behind the rebellion. The galaxy was engulfed in flames. Years of fighting followed. We lost so many. But the foundation that was laid was strong. The old council was dismantled, and the Galactic Assembly was born. Its charter became the new law of the land, built on the one thing Tom always believed in: that we had to listen to one another. It wasn't perfect. It was never going to be. But it was better. And right then, better was more than enough. Which brings us to today. On Concordia Prime, representatives from every single member of the new Galactic Assembly gathered in the Memorial Garden. The Assembly Speaker, Vanna, a woman who once served on the old council but turned against it, stepped forward to speak. "We honor Thomas Chen," she said, her voice echoing across the garden, "not by blindly obeying rules, but by making sure our laws are worth obeying. We honor him by ensuring that justice and the law finally mean the exact same thing." Back here on Earth, in our sunny California backyard, my daughters and I watched the ceremony on a little screen. When the entire galaxy observed a moment of silence, we bowed our heads. "I'm just so incredibly proud of him," I whispered, my voice choking up. Not because he changed the universe, but because he was a good man who never forgot who he was. "We're proud of him too, Mom," said Jennifer. She's a cadet at the Defense Academy now, hoping to serve on one of the new starships where humans and aliens are finally equals. "I'm writing a paper about him for my xenobiology class," Sarah added, "about how his choice proves that every species, no matter how different, treasures life." "He would have loved that so much," I said with a sad smile. "He always said that if you looked past all the different customs and weird appearances, we're all pretty much the same. He really believed we could all get along if we just tried." We stayed there for a long time after the broadcast ended, wrapped in our memories of the husband and father we miss every single day. An entire galactic government was torn down, and from its ashes, something new is growing, a future that was worth the terrible price he paid. As stars are born and die, as empires rise and fall, the new Galactic Assembly will carry on his mission, building, learning, and facing the great unknown together. And through it all, no one will ever forget. They'll never forget Thomas Chen, the lone human engineer. They'll never forget the day the Council tried to make an example of him and instead made him a legend. They'll always remember the lesson that was forged in fire and loss. That justice is never a gift handed down from the powerful. It's something you have to build together, for each other. It takes hard work, and it takes the courage to do what's right, especially when it's the hardest thing in the world. Tom knew that. He lived by it, and he died for it. And now, 10 billion souls on 1,000 different worlds are trying their best to live up to his example. The galaxy is a long way from perfect. It always will be. But for the very first time, it's genuinely trying to be good. And in the end, that's all any of us can really do. To try, to hope, to build, and to never, ever forget what freedom truly costs. At the memorial on Concordia Prime, under the light of its twin suns, new flowers are blooming. Envoys from dozens of worlds planted them. Each flower is different, each one beautiful in its own way, but they're all growing in the same garden, reaching for the same light. It's just a symbol, I know. But symbols matter. They are living proof that even after the darkest night, life comes back. Beauty finds a way. Hope can be reborn. The galaxy learned its lesson in the hardest way possible. And my Tom, a man who only wanted to save a few strangers and come home to his family, became the teacher. He taught the galaxy not with speeches, but with one simple, selfless choice. He didn't seek greatness, he just did what he knew was right. The galaxy will always remember. And because it remembers, it will always try to be better. That's more than he ever could have asked for. And that is everything.